Hey everyone, if you love the topic of my channel, you're in the right place. Don't forget to smash that like button and hit subscribe to stay updated with amazing content. In a desperate bid to stop the catastrophe he had unwittingly helped create, he had spent the past decade refining his inventions, believing that his work would ensure peace through deterrence. But the very power he had forged was now in the hands of leaders who sought domination instead of balance. Adrian presented them with calculations, projections, and ethical arguments. He showed them the grim future that awaited if war was waged. The sheer devastation, the countless lives lost, the irreparable damage to civilization, he laid it all out before them. He pleaded, not as a scientist, but as a man who had finally grasped the consequences of his arrogance. But power was intoxicating, and those in control had already tasted it. They saw only conquest and supremacy, ignoring the grim warnings of destruction. They dismissed Adrian's concerns, calling him weak, claiming that a man of science should not meddle in politics. To them, he had fulfilled his purpose. Now, his creations belonged to the nation, not him. The decision had already been made, and no amount of reasoning could sway their ambition. As the final meeting adjourned, Adrian stormed out, his heart pounding with dread. He had failed. He had built a weapon meant to prevent war, and now it would be the very thing that started one. Days later, the world fell into chaos. The war began with a swift and merciless assault. His colossal machines, once symbols of technological brilliance, became harbingers of destruction. Cities turned to rubble, nations collapsed, and millions perished under the relentless march of his mechanical legions. Adrian watched in horror as his worst fears came true, but it was only the beginning of his suffering. 5 years into the war, at the age of 40, Adrian faced his greatest loss. His wife and daughter, his last tether to hope, were caught in the crossfire of a ruthless attack. He had always believed he could shield them from the horrors of his creations. But war was merciless. The very machines he had designed, the ones he had once admired, tore apart the life he had cherished most. Grief consumed him. The world around him became a wasteland, not just in destruction, but in purpose. He had lost everything: his family, his ideals, his belief in the future. With no reason left to live, he withdrew from the world, isolating himself in the ruins of what was once his grand laboratory. The man who had once stood tall before the world now existed as a hollow shell, suffocating under the weight of his mistakes. One fateful evening, unable to bear the pain any longer, Adrian decided to end it all. Standing atop the wreckage of his empire, he prepared to take his final step into oblivion. But fate had other plans. Just as he was about to let go, a voice called out. A 16-year-old boy, barely old enough to understand the complexities of war, stood before him. There was something in the boy's eyes, determination, hope, and a fierce intelligence that reminded Adrian of himself at that age. This boy, against all odds, still believed that the war could be stopped. Night stretched on. Adrian listened to the boy's words. A new resolve began to take root within him. Perhaps he had one final role to play, not as a harbinger of chaos, but as a guide to a new hope. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, Adrian Voss chose to live, not for himself, but for a chance at redemption.